no matter where you are on this healing or really life journey, those core beliefs, those doubts that are created from those core beliefs can often creep back in. Depending on how vulnerable you are, depending on where you are on your healing journey, the more impact they tend to have. Today I'm going to share with you something that feels really vulnerable to share with you. Probably the most vulnerable video I've ever recorded, for a reason that you may not think. But welcome. If you're new to my channel, I'm so glad that you're here. Make sure you subscribe and click the little bell for notifications. And if you've been here a while, thank you so much for being a part of this community. So, this feels more vulnerable to me than anything I've shared before, not because of what I'm sharing with you necessarily, but because it's something that is still something I can struggle with on occasion. So to start with, there were a couple reasons why I decided to do this video. And one is the idea of comparison, because that continues to come up for other people. And it's something that continues to come up in my life. And something that I'm practicing with that. So I think I've mentioned this before, but I have created a new journal. It's called Releasing the Day for a Peaceful Night. That's not what this video is about, but my journal entry is in here. So I'll share a little bit more at the end of the video about this journal. But the idea is to be able to have a practice. Because remember, healing is a practice. It's about a practice to be intentional about releasing the things that are swirling around in your mind that keep you from having a peaceful night or restful sleep. So at the end of your day, when you're winding down, you just open this up and you write down the things that you are ready to release. The to-do list, the doubts, the fears, the worries, whatever it is, about anything, big or little. You just write it down, and energetically that helps you release some of that energy that swirls around with those feelings, the fear, the anxiety, and that sort of thing. So before I share with you what I've written in here, I want to just be very intentional about, or share with you my intention in why I am sharing this with you. I'm sharing this with you because, as I mentioned, the comparison thing, people share with me that they often compare where they're at, how they struggle, and then they look at me and sometimes feel like they could never be where I am, meaning like feel confident to talk about this stuff, share my own personal story, talk openly about sexual intimacy and emotional intimacy and like all of those really kind of vulnerable things to talk about. And it's really hard when you haven't yet experienced it for yourself to imagine that you can be there. And people, including myself, often have this idea that healing means that you don't really struggle with stuff anymore, that the things that used to bother you will never bother you anymore, that you never doubt yourself and that sort of thing. And that's just simply not true at all. And I think I've been pretty clear about that. But I know that most of what I share is about previous things that I've struggled with and the fact that I don't struggle with them now, which is part of the reason why sharing all of that really personal stuff that I've shared with you hasn't felt vulnerable, because I don't carry responsibility for it. I don't carry shame around it. I don't doubt myself with any of that. So it doesn't feel particularly vulnerable to share that stuff at this stage in my healing. But in all reality, I'm human, and therefore there are things that still I can find myself questioning or doubting. And I've shared with you before that tends to show up predominantly in my work life. Not so much in my personal life, but in my work life. And the difference in how it shows up and how it affects me where I am now versus where I would have been, or how it would have affected me before I did a lot of the healing I did. Well, I wouldn't have been doing this stuff before I did the healing that I did, because it would have been incredibly vulnerable and I never would have had any level of confidence to do any of it. But when that stuff shows up for me now, I notice it. It can cause me to think, is that really what I should do? There's a lot of shoulds that come in, and that's always an indicator of doubt. It's always an indicator of judgment that might be there. So before I share with you what I've written here, I want to be very clear that I know that most of you that are going to be watching this video, if you're still here, you're likely going to fall into this category. You are a caretaker. You are, you have a lot of empathy. You don't want people to feel bad, and you try to make them feel better, right? And those are lovely things, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. But I just want to be very clear that my sharing this with you is not for you to affirm me. That's not what this is about. You're welcome to comment in any way that you want to comment, but I'm not looking for you to build me up so that I feel better, because I feel fine. This is just something that I know I need to continue to work on to let go. And so coming back to the journal, I decided to do it in this journal because I've decided that I am going to practice over the 90-ish days in being really intentional about writing down what I am ready to release that keeps sometimes bringing me back to those doubts and questions that I have for myself. So not looking for you to affirm my knowledge, my impact, or my worthiness. Your thoughts, your affirmations, all of that is meaningful to me. So it's not that it doesn't mean something to me, but I just want to be very clear that you don't need to worry about me feeling bad or think that you need to come up with something really nice to say. That's not what this is about at all, because I really don't feel bad. This is just the stuff that I know that I tend to go back to. So at the beginning of the journal, and I'm literally going to read to you what I've written here. At the beginning of the journal, there's a space to write what your intention is for the journal. And that could be anything. It doesn't have to be anything. You can leave that blank. But because I'm going to use this for a very specific purpose, I decided to write an intention here. So I'm going to read that to you. My intention: to release all doubts and fears that keep me from living my life fully, that hold me back from stepping boldly and fully into the life I desire, heart, mind, body, and soul. What I seek is also seeking me. I believe that's a Rumi quote, and I like that. I think about that often. So now I'm going to share with you the journal entry, and I've only made one because I did this right before I got sick. I was sick last week, which is why I wasn't here with you last week. I'm better. I'm fine now. So again, as I read this to you, remember, this isn't something that I'm really feeling bad about. It's not something that is affecting my worthiness. It's not making me feel bad. It's not, I promise you, okay? But I know that this is stuff that crosses my mind in those moments of questioning, those moments when I'm doubting myself. And before I get to that, actually, I want to share with you another thing, because this might help you take in what I'm saying here as it not having to be a really bad thing. So I was recently listening to something, and I can't remember who the person was, somebody in the mental health field who has a lot of experience and expertise and is a PhD, I believe. But he was talking about how we compare and have these expectations of ourselves. And I listened to this after I wrote this, but he said And I laughed out loud because I can so relate to it, because he mentioned that like there are days that he'll have a client session and he feels really great about it, and he feels like, yes, I'm doing my best work, and I've really this is the best place for me to be, and this is my purpose, and that kind of stuff. And then he said, maybe even the next day possibly, that he could have a session that for him feels really flat. And then he finds himself thinking, there were so many other career paths I should have chosen. And I literally laughed because, oh my gosh, I can so relate to that. Because there are days that when I have what feels to me like a great session, where I've been able to really explain something in a way that somebody really is able to internalize it, where something shifts and you can see it. You can see that shift happen. They don't necessarily notice it, but I notice it. Those aha moments, and that can happen. It's happened for many of you. You shared with me these moments of recognition of something that has kind of broken you open in the most beautiful way. Those days, it's easy to feel like, yes, I am doing my best work, and yes, I am meant to do this work. And then on those days where, like he said, a session might feel flat, I have questioned myself many times. What am I doing? I never should have done this. Who am I kidding? Like, there's all kinds of thoughts that can fly in there. And what's interesting about that is that on days like that, and I've had this happen for me personally, there have been at least a few times over the years where I have felt like I just did not show up in the way that I wanted to show up. That wasn't, I wasn't my best self. I had nothing of value to offer, that I wasted their time. And a few times, very specifically, people have come in the following week, or we've had a session the next time, and they've actually commented on how that session was really powerful for them. And I'm sharing that with you because even on the days that we feel like we're not our best selves, for whatever reason, just not feeling well, we don't say the things that we think that we should say, we aren't there for somebody in the way that we think we should be, that sometimes that's really not the case at all. So just a little side note there, I guess. But that idea, again, as I'm about to read this to you, because I don't want you to feel bad for me, that idea that it ebbs and flows, and some days you can feel great and some days maybe not so much. And while I don't necessarily think about all the other career paths I could have chosen, what I do find myself thinking at times like that is, maybe I should just go work at Target. I've seriously thought that at times. Not seriously considered the idea of doing that, but had moments where I thought, maybe this isn't for me. Because when these doubts creep in, that's where it can take you. And again, I'm sharing this with you in part because I'm hopeful that you can recognize that two things. One, that the people that you're comparing yourself to struggle at times. They have doubts about things. But also that the more healing you do, even when these doubts creep in, they don't have the same impact on you as they do at earlier stages in your healing. Earlier stages in your healing, when these doubts creep in, it can really make you feel like you want to give it all up, like you want to run away. And I have been there, even in this work. Very early on, I had a session that I really thought, oh my God, what am I doing? How horrible am I that I decided to do this? I can't do this, and all kinds of things. That was a very long time ago. So early on, when you're in this healing process, those doubts can really affect everything: how you feel, what you believe, how you show up. The further along you are in your healing, when these doubts come in, they don't affect you at that depth. They still don't feel good necessarily. You might still feel like you have a bad few days, but they don't affect you nearly in the same way. So I'm going to read with you the things, or read to you the things that come up for me. But again, this is not stuff that I really struggle with. It's not stuff that makes me feel really bad. It's not stuff that makes me question my worth as a human being. None of that. Okay? Take that in. Remind yourself of that as you're hearing this. Because I know a lot of you feel, like I said, you're empathetic. And if you're feeling like, as I read this to you, that I'm hurting because of this, that's not going to feel good to you, and that's not my intention. Because even as I wrote this, I wasn't hurting as I was writing it. I was writing it as a way to identify what can be present for me and what I am ready to release once and for all. All right? All of that. Hopefully I've prepared you enough. It's not that it's that bad. Okay. Once I finish this, I will come back. I release worry that I'm not truly the survivor whisperer, that I'm not good enough, that my time has come and gone. Doubt that I have something valuable to offer. Fear that it's too late for me. It's too late to make the impact I thought I might be able to make. Expectations. Expectations of my work, or how I reach and connect with people, how it should look. So that was my journal entry. And these are the kinds of things that my mind goes back to. And as I wrote this, when I finished, I recognized a little bit of a theme there. You might have noticed about kind of like it being too late. My time has come and gone. And I think that that has a lot to do with aging. And just kind of facing that reality personally in my personal life. So I think that that's a part of that. And I don't feel that way. And I have no plan on giving this up or anything like that. But that's something that can creep in. And part of that is like societal expectations, right? So even though I'm confident in the work that I do, even though I'm confident personally, even though I've been doing this work for a long time and all of that, there can still be those moments of doubt. But again, the doubt does not affect me in the way that it would have before. And so my intention on using this is, I think I'm going to use that format, and I didn't do that intentionally necessarily. I was just thinking about, okay, what holds me back? And for me, there are worries, there are doubts, there are fears, and there are expectations. So I think what I'm going to do is continue to practice that, identifying a worry, a doubt, a fear, and expectation. It may be the same ones over and over again. But each time I write it down in the form of an intentional practice of releasing, I bring more awareness to that. I can remind myself of why it's not too late, of evidence that, in fact, the idea of survivor whisperer, I didn't come up with that myself. I did trademark it, but it was after a couple of people, one a client, one somebody who saw me on YouTube and watched a lot of my videos. They actually referred to me in that way. And I decided to use it. But reminding myself of different things that help me see that I don't have to be better than somebody else. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to have the most number of followers and the most views and all of that kind of stuff. I can remind myself that one aha moment is enough. One meaningful connection is enough. So, and I can go through that with all of these. Do some reality testing around it. So check in with yourself and notice, Do you have an inclination to write in the comments to make me feel better? And maybe we can even take that broader with other people. Do you jump in and want to make them feel better? Again, there's nothing wrong with that, but I think it can be helpful to notice that that might be present. And again, this is not about looking for affirmation from any of you that I am worthy of doing this work or worthy as a human being. At my core, I do trust that. I do. Just occasionally, those doubts can creep in. And that's why I shared this with you. So I would love to hear what you think, what you notice coming up for you, whether it was a desire to jump in, or maybe something that surprised you, maybe something that you even kind of like think, how could you ever doubt that? Why do you question that? How can you question that and still do these YouTube videos? That's okay. And I think that's an important conversation to have, because it does feel kind of like, how can both of those things be true? And that's part of, I think, what's important to practice and understanding in this healing process. So if you are interested in checking this journal out, I will share a link in the description below. Right now, it's only available on Amazon, but it is available internationally. The link I have will only be for the US, but you can find it on your own Amazon, wherever that is in the world. It actually isn't in every market. I don't think it's available in Mexico or Central or South America. I don't think it's available in Africa. It is available in Europe. It is available in Japan, which is interesting. I don't know why that is. I didn't choose that. But Europe, US, Canada, Australia, and Japan. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And another thing I think that might be important to point out here. So it felt vulnerable for me to share this with you because this is real stuff that I struggle with on occasion. It's current. It's happening in my life now. And that is going to feel more vulnerable for me because I haven't obviously yet fully healed all of that. And it's still something that can make me feel a little vulnerable. However, while it felt pretty vulnerable and there was some uncertainty, some unease in sharing initially, now that I've shared it, that's not there anymore. I know you won't see this until tomorrow, but that unease is gone. I feel relaxed. I feel ease, no uncertainty any longer. And I want you to think about that, because just because we feel that vulnerability doesn't mean that what we're about to do is the wrong thing. It just means that it's not something you're used to doing. It's something new. It's something that feels a little uncertain. So share your thoughts, your reactions in the comments. And again, if you haven't yet subscribed, make sure to do so. Click the bell for notifications. And if you found this video helpful or think that somebody else might, give it a thumbs up so that other people can more easily find it. Thanks so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you next time.